Hello everyone, this is Hajra. I'm an occupational therapist and regional director Asia at Occupational Therapy Without Borders. We have created this platform to connect people globally, show the spirit of being one, and have faith that together we can pass this time. While we started this campaign, I came across a very wonderful lady, the one who believes that every child has the basic right to have education. Every child needs to be indulged into the educational activities. They need to be a part of the community, part of the society, have the sense of belongingness, and be independent and be a part of us. That's really a great initiative and vision, and that is brought to us by very wonderful Angie Anderson. Hello, Angie.
Hi, Hajra.
How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Here's my dog, Pippi.
I love Fifi. How is the weather going around?
Oh, it's dreadful. North Wales has got a dreadful reputation for rain. It always rains. Yeah, always rains.
So it's like a bit hot over here. So it's wonderful that the weather is great over there. Knowing that you have been a great keynote speaker and a teacher and have been a head teacher, if you could tell us about your journey from how you got into the teaching and how it feels like to be here and how your feelings and your journey.
Yeah, well, I suppose I started off in mainstream education, but was always asked to support children with special needs for different reasons. And so in the in about 1984, 85, I was asked to lead up a dyslexic association as the lead teacher there, and I'd done a dyslexic postgraduate diploma and so on, and so I was the teacher in charge there. That was as well as my ordinary mainstream teaching post that I had. And then I had to open up another dyslexic centre because we had so many coming. And then I went into special school teaching, and within a week of being there, they asked if I would be the acting deputy head because the deputy head had gone ill. And so I went in to do that and became deputy head of the special school. I introduced the P levels, which was quite a big thing in Great Britain at the time in the early 90s. Introduced the P levels there, and then went across to the Channel Islands to Jersey and introduced the P levels there to a special school where I was assistant head, and then came back over to Great Britain and was assistant head at a very large special school in Cheltenham, and then went from there to become head of a special school in North Wales, where I was head for 10 years and until last year when I gave up, because as well as being a head teacher, I also write educational books, and I speak at conferences all over the world. And if anybody there is a head teacher, you know that it's 24/7, particularly of a special school. So it's never ending. So to try and do everything, be a head and do all the other jobs as well, and it's nigh impossible. And as well as that, there comes a stage where you know that all the work that you have done, and good work in particular that you have introduced with the support of your team, your school team, needs to be replicated elsewhere around the world. And so it is about sharing then what you know is good practice and what you feel could and should be happening in other special schools. And I forgot to say, I also inspect. I was a peer inspector in special schools at the time when I was a head. And I now support and advise in an advisory capacity special schools, and I've been doing that since I finished as a head teacher. So
it's quite a long journey starting.
I'm not sure if that's everything, but it's certainly a lot of what I do.
It seems like quite a long journey, starting from teacher to head teacher and writing educational articles and inspector. This must have make you gain a lot of experience, when you start from a level a little low, and then as you go up and up, you're going to learn more and more. That's really you.
I think it's very important as a
Yes,
special head teacher, or even to be in a special school, to have been in a mainstream school first, which is the way that I did it, so that you've got an idea of what students with mainstream capabilities can do, and so you can see, whether or not there are any students who may be inadvertently in a special school who may benefit more from being in a mainstream environment. And obviously then also about inclusion and whether or not there should be some time sharing between a mainstream and a special school. I know that a lot of people want to do away with special schools, but I still believe that there is a place for special schools in society.
yes.
Because
That's really,
yeah.
yes,
I mean,
starting from the mainstream and going towards a special school, it's been great. And writing about those articles, I came to know that you have also your own school for like more than 10 years that has like 24 therapeutic and technological interventions for pupils.
Yes.
With learning differences and all that. If you could share that experience with us, and before you could explain that, could you give a brief explanation of inclusive education for people that are watching us, so that they could understand what basically is inclusive education, how different it is from like simple mainstream, and what does an inclusive education do? What basically is it?
Well, that's quite a difficult question, I think. Inclusion used to be called integration, where you were integrated into a mainstream class, perhaps for certain parts of the day. Inclusion is supposed to be where you're totally included within that position. But I've yet to see inclusion done in that way successfully. You're either in a mainstream school or you're in a special school, or you're sort of integrating between the two. It's called inclusion, but a lot of the time a support member of staff will accompany a student into the mainstream school, so it's not fully inclusive in that way. That's what I mean, in that you still are part of, but apart from those children that are actually full-time in a mainstream school. So I think inclusion is quite a difficult word to think of somebody as being fully included in anything, because it does depend on the communication abilities of whoever is wishing to be included. So
Right.
yeah,
I got to know what you mean to say is that inclusion stands that every child can be included in the class, not only for educational but also for extracurricular activities. All students can study together in a class.
Yes,
Right?
and certainly, Hajra, you're quite right there, and I think that's a good point you made. Some of our students would have gone across to a mainstream school just for playtimes, because they enjoyed playing with children who didn't have any disabilities or learning difficulties or anything like that. They enjoyed playing with the ordinary child, for want of a better word, but they didn't feel academically able to sit in the class with them, because their frustration levels or their inability to be able to do the work that might be set for them would put them off then. So a lot of our children would go across to something that they were particularly good at, so that they were succeeding. So that is what inclusion should be about, where you're actually able to participate at a level where you can participate,
So what? Yeah, that's really a great definition. This really urges everyone to go for inclusive education. That's really a great thing. And what about the school that you have been running for like 10 years with different 24 therapeutic and technological interventions? If you could share your experience and tell us about those interventions as well.
Yeah, well, there are a lot of interventions that you can have in a special school setting. If you're lucky enough to have a hydrotherapy pool, well, that goes without saying, you've got that straight away, which is fantastic. For children to be able to be out of their wheelchairs if they're in wheelchairs, so that they get to have the freedom that a hydrotherapy pool gives them, that they won't get anywhere else really. That amount of freedom to move their legs, to move themselves about, and to get that sheer joy of the freedom of it. And there are lots of programs that you can actually do within a hydrotherapy pool that relate to that I can always send on if anybody was interested. Obviously, some of the other things then that would happen, let's think of something that's a cheaper alternative. Yoga is quite cheap. Cosmic Yoga is available online. You can go to YouTube and download Cosmic Yoga. You can do it for free in a school. Magic therapy is another one, which is a fine motor skills therapy, which a great guy, Kevin Spencer from America, introduced us to. You can go to his site and download all of that. For other fine motor skills, there are, I'm trying to think of what it's called now.
Some vibrating therapy or something like that.
But there is another one which is no, I can't think of it. Magic something or other. Anyway, it's to do with fine motor skills for the hands. There's that one. Do Disco. It's called Do Disco.
Go Disco.
So just Google Do Disco on YouTube. They will give you lots of programs of how to do some fine motor skill therapies within your class or school or whatever. And then you've got, we introduced, paid for one of our teaching assistants, had an amazing staff at my school. I was very, very lucky at School Pencork in North Wales. And one of the staff went off to train as a reflexologist and then came back and delivered reflexology to the students. Some of the students found that particularly helpful with their challenging behaviour. And therapeutic music. Now, we all know that there are music therapists and they have specific training that they have to undergo and so on. There is also therapeutic music, which you can do online courses for, as long as you've got, you know, the academic ability, say university degree or whatever, to do that kind of training. So we provided therapeutic music throughout the school as a special school. Now, sometimes, and previous to having this school, when I was deputy head of a special school years before, and certainly as assistant heads as well, we would have only been able to afford to have a qualified music therapist in once or twice a week. By having a therapist in music, which is slightly different, we paid for somebody full-time. We were able to train up one of our members of staff in that and provide therapeutic music full-time. Vibroacoustic therapy is another one. So vibroacoustic therapy, I managed to get a waterbed donated by a charity to the school, and then we had the electronics plugged into the bed. But you can buy vibroacoustic cushions and pillows and all kinds nowadays. So that was 10 years ago when we had the waterbed, still using the waterbed very successfully for vibroacoustic. And then you buy Somatron tapes, which you can get from America. And Somatron tapes, then you don't hear the tapes, you're never supposed to hear them. You feel the vibrations in the vibroacoustic bed. And it's very good for massaging the internal organs. It tends to do that. Very good for people who are constipated. Very good for people who find it very difficult to sleep. But then the hydrotherapy pool is very good for that as well. And
that's really good. That's really, I can already see how fun time the kids must having be. You know, that fun time and, you know, going from magic hands to go disc and vibrations. It must have been fun.
It does depend on what, it's always about what the student needs, what's, you know, their needs and their desires, what suits them. And we've had tremendous success. I can remember one child with severe challenging behavior and autism, and vibroacoustic therapy was the key for him. That was where he went, and he was able to almost meditate as he lay on the bed and would calm himself down before he went back to the classroom. Another child with severely challenged behavior, reflexology was the key for him. Another child, neurofeedback was the key for him. So neurofeedback is more of a technological aid, which is brain training. And I can remember with this particular child, 30 really challenging behaviors a week. After 10 days of neurofeedback training, well, less than 10 days, but 10 days, his carer came to see me to say to me that I knew he didn't sleep, because he asked me for a cardboard box once to take home to sleep in a cardboard box because he didn't sleep. And she came to see me and said he always ended up going into her bed of a night time because he just couldn't sleep. And she said after the neurofeedback training, she would stand by his bedroom door watching him sleep for the sheer joy of knowing that he slept throughout the night. He slept through the night after having neurofeedback. He was a changed child. His behaviors went from 30 a week to 3 a month.
Wow.
Absolutely phenomenal change. Neurofeedback.
Yes.
Very good for ADHD, which is what he had. Play therapy is hugely successful. Certainly with the child that we had, a little girl with quite challenging behavior and autistic, would go to play therapy first thing every morning, because I had my teaching assistants trained in these different therapies. That was the biggest thing with 3 schools, special schools closed, for me to open a brand new special school. And those 3 schools were providing teaching for children, primarily in the one school, it was moderate learning difficulties. Well, those staff, I had to interview loads of staff, hundreds of staff, to get staff for this new school. And of course, they had no experience of working with children who had profound and multiple learning difficulties, severe learning difficulties, complex needs difficulties. So the training is the biggest expense, and the biggest, most important thing for any school to be a good school is to ensure that you provide the training for the staff. And so this was where I had to find all the funding for, and to ensure that we did that. But as well as that, you have to ensure that the training that you provide and the therapies that you're going to provide have to be suitable. So I did a huge amount of research myself in my own holiday times, in the downtimes from school, to ensure that what I was going to introduce into the school was worthwhile. So anything that I thought wasn't worthwhile, then I wouldn't, and I may have spent the whole holidays in, researching it. And I can remember doing that with Lego therapy. And I can remember spending the summer holidays about 4 or 5 years ago, going through it all and thinking, well, it's great therapy, but I'm not introducing it because my staff won't be able to stop themselves from helping the children with the Lego. So I didn't bring it in. And then, to my shame, I was in church on a Sunday, a few months later, maybe even 6 months later. And we had social Lego brought into church, where all of us did this social Lego to decide on the future of the church. And when I could see what this social Lego did for us, I was ashamed of the fact that I hadn't allowed my staff to make the decisions themselves as to whether or not it was useful in school. So that day, luckily enough, a Lego shop was open. I went and bought a load of Lego, and I had a training day in school the next day, took it in, set up all these different venues in school for the staff to, as well as do the training that they were having in having their needs met with, say, safeguarding and all the rest of it. They went off and were able to do the Lego, and they had to do it as it was Lego therapy. So there's always a builder and a director, and then somebody, and all that.
You're the engineer, constructor. That's it. You're really hardworking and such a great and innovative ideas. You're already always adding more and more to it. That's really super cool.
When we introduced it with the staff on that day, it was the most successful training day I had had up to that point, and they absolutely loved it. And Lego therapy is so successful in that school, so successful. So there's Lego therapy. Play therapy is hugely successful, playing with little characters, sometimes playing with the bigger things. Shearborn therapy is a dance therapy that we introduced there, very successful. Very good for both children with profound and multiple learning difficulties, but also for children with autism in a different way. Obviously, rebound therapy, which is trampolining therapy, which I have written a book on, therapeutic trampolining for children with young people with special needs.
I was about to talk on it. I'm so amazed, and it's like a shocked in a happy manner that you have done a lot. They are so innovative ideas. I'm loving them. They are definitely very good. Let's talk about that. You have introduced so many things into it, and you have been working with the special kids with additional needs and helps, whether it is physical or in mental or in learning issues. So what do you think that what can the schools provide inclusive education to all, or there need to be done something like that?
Well, from my own personal viewpoint, I think therapeutic and technological interventions are useful for all children. And the fact of the matter is, you don't know until you've tried them what is suitable for a particular student to give them the chance to learn that they didn't have before. So, for instance, eye gaze is a prime point. Eye gaze is where a child will use their eyes to direct certain things on the screen and then be able to communicate. We had a child who had been diagnosed with profound and multiple learning difficulties, but when we introduced eye gaze to him, amazing, absolutely amazing. Within a couple of weeks, he was telling the assistant who was working with him on the eye gaze to go and get herself some dinner and things, using the eye gaze to direct her on that. He went from using the big eye gaze Tobii machine that we use into having a smaller one, like an iPad one, put onto his wheelchair, and he was able to then communicate using that. He went from being diagnosed as being PMLD, he's not PMLD at all, he's got moderate learning difficulties, but he's also got physical difficulties as well, And my concern always is to make sure that we meet the child at their needs, to ensure that they can communicate to whatever level and through whatever means they can, to make sure that they get the right education, to make sure that they get what they desire, that they have the education they want, and that they don't suddenly switch off. Because the concern always is that if you're not meeting their needs, they may well have that learned helplessness where, okay, I give in, do it all for me, because you're not listening to me, you're not giving me what I want, I'm not able to communicate, I'm not able to say I don't want that, this, that, and the other, so therefore, just get on with it. And that is very upsetting and worrying, to think that there is anybody around who's feeling like that they're not getting the education that they deserve. And I mean, we know right across the world there are many children not getting the education they deserve through other reasons. But in our world, in the Western world, where we have the availability of these facilities and these technologies, we've used virtual reality in our school. I set up a virtual reality room. I studied Haifa University in Israel, doing some fantastic work with students with autism about crossing the road and so on. And so I'd looked into that one of my summer holidays about 6 years ago or whatever, and decided that I wanted to create a virtual reality room in the school, and so managed to get this Omni project into there. And the virtual reality was around the 3 walls. We had trouble with children crossing the roads because we've got several roads outside our school down into the town. And we introduced road crossing through the virtual reality room, and we had 100% success rate. And it became an article in an SEN magazine because it was so hugely successful.
Okay. So you have been telling about those things. You have been not only national speaker, but you're also an international speaker and writer of many educational books and all that. So I want to know, you, as you are saying, you're like you have a lot of access to the technology. What about if we start the inclusive education in an area where there are not that much technology? What should be the basic things that are need to be present in an educational setup that provides inclusive education? Such basic technologies, as you have told us, 24. So what about the basic one that need to be must be present in a school that provides inclusive education?
Well, I think in this day and age, obviously, the Wi-Fi and it's all available. I certainly would want every child, if the money is available, to have an iPad, because an iPad opens up the world for them, and it depends on what you're able to have. If you're not able to have that technology, if you haven't got the money and so on, well, then you would use an Etron glass frame to do the eye pointing. So you wouldn't need the eye gaze, which costs a fortune, but it's going to take you a lot longer to get to where you want to be with that student, who may give up along the way, than it would if you had an eye gaze machine. So an Etron frame, which is basically just a sheer plastic frame that you put words on for them to, or letters if you're teaching them the alphabet, that they eye gaze at to show whether or not they're actually, responding. So you could have yes and no. So you're saying to them, would you like this apple? And they eye point to yes or no, using the Etron frame. So that's a very basic, simple level that's quite easy to, anybody can make a perspex glass frame. And certainly some of my staff's husbands have done that for them, so that that's a very basic, simple method. Like I've said, if you've got access to the internet, there are loads of free things on YouTube now. So there are so many free resources available on YouTube that people can access, as long as they've got access to the internet in the first place, and as long as it's not in an area where the internet isn't working too well. And if that's the case, then you need to look at some of the more easier things that you can provide, which is shear bone therapy and Lego therapy, and play therapy, and TAC-PAC, which is a touch therapy. It's quite basic as well. So, I mean, any of these things, Hajra, I'm more than willing to give you, details of, and where you can find out more information about them, if anybody's interested who's listening. That's all I ever want to do, is to ensure that every child anywhere in the world has the opportunity to be the best that they want to be.
That's really wonderful. That's so nice of you. Thank you, Angie. I'll definitely talk to you about that with you, because I am more than willing to learn about that, because I really want that inclusive education should be provided to each and every child, because it's the right of every child. I've got a question over here, that can you please suggest me some ideas to make kids indulge in studies happily?
Well, every child has to be in the right frame of mind before they can learn. So every child has to be in the right frame of mind. Now, I can remember incidences where that's not the case and they're not going to learn. I can remember going back many years ago now, when I was new to teaching, and I went into the class and I was teaching a lesson that I wasn't really qualified to teach, but they'd asked me to study up on it the night before and go in and do the theory of it. And it was metalwork. And I was in the class, went into the class, and I'm teaching, and this boy in the class peed all over the floor. Now, he was 14, and I was sort of quite taken aback, and I said, you could have gone straight out to the toilet if you wanted to. You could have rushed out to the toilet. I said, you're going to have to clean it up, I'm afraid. And one of the other boys ran out of the class to get the head of department, who was the woodwork teacher. And he came in and went to his cupboard and got something out, which I thought was a ruler. When he put it back in the cupboard, I realised it wasn't. It was a hammer. And with that hammer, he had held onto the metal end of it, but had hit that child over the hand with the handle of the hammer several times, quite hard. I'm surprised he didn't break his hand. But anyway, the child then ran out of the classroom and went down to the boys' toilets in that school. I went down to the toilets and said to him, you know, can you come out? The head of the school went into the toilets and got him to come out of the toilets. And the head said to him, I'm going to have to inform your parents now for what you've done. And with that, the boy punched him in the face, in the eye. And he had black eye came up days later. But when we investigated that, for a start, that teacher had no right to have hurt him in the way he did. But the child's mother had died that morning of cancer. And the father had thought it was all right to send him to school. And that boy had come to school already traumatized by what had gone on at home. And yes, he peed on the floor, but was it because he was still traumatized from his mother had died that morning? And so it is about being in the right frame of mind. If he'd have come into school and we'd have known that this had what happened and that his dad wanted him in school, he could have gone and had reflexology, or he could have gone on the Vibro Acoustic bed, or he could have gone and had any number of different therapies to enable him to get into the right frame of mind before he learned. Because you cannot, we all know that, if you've got something on your mind and something so bad, you are not in the right frame of mind to learn. And so before you can teach any child, they have to be in that right frame of mind. They could have profound and multiple learning difficulties and be in huge amount of pain. Their body could be in a huge amount of pain, and you're expecting them to learn. You can't expect any child to learn until they're in the right frame of mind to learn.
Yes, that's really a great advice and a great piece of note that you shared with us. Talking about that, as you shared that the child was going through the emotional trauma and like that. The kids that are having that requires additional help with, learning, because they're having some learning issues. So they get into the emotional trauma very easily because they're facing difficulties, and they're not getting into that pace that they should be, or the teachers are requiring from them. So this may lead to some different behaviors. So how to deal with this emotional trauma and behaviors that children show that requires extra help or additional need?
Well, there are many behaviour programs available now. So, I mean, we used an Incredible Years program, which was, I'd recommend it to anyone. It's devised at Bangor University in North Wales. And that's a particularly good behaviour program. There are many others, Teen Teach programs and all the rest of it. And there has to be a behaviour program that's been agreed by everybody concerned, including the parents and so on. But I still maintain that if you introduce therapeutic interventions and certain technological interventions, such as neurofeedback and so on, then you can overcome certain behaviors. So although everybody's human, you are going to have behaviors, certainly with children with severe autism, you're going to have some meltdowns, and therefore it's the training of the staff in how to deal with these. So sometimes you will have staff members who will go about dealing with these meltdowns in completely the wrong attitude, and therefore incite that child to just go over the top and be even worse. So it is very much about training staff in dealing with these things as well. So staff have to have the training. It is the most expensive part of what you spend your money on in a school is staff training. It's vital. There are lots of free sites, and I can certainly send you the free sites on staff training.
Yeah.
Lots of free sites on training staff in autism. And certainly when I took on the role at this new school and had so many staff who didn't understand autism at all, it was very worrying for me, because we were having behaviour instances constantly because the staff didn't understand autism. And by I had a rota system then I set up in school, and they would go off to the computer room that we had at the time, and they would learn all about autism on there. And it's free. There's so many free sites now. And then they would change. The child didn't need to change. It was the staff member who needed to change. And sometimes that is the secret. It's about how are you perceiving this? And sometimes staff would perceive it as bad behavior when it wasn't bad behavior. You know, they're in a fight, flight, or fright mode where they freeze, or they want to run away, or they're so frightened. And sometimes they will react, where they will do things that they may bang their head, they may want to hit people and all the rest of it. But it is because of their autism a lot of the time. And it is about staff members understanding their needs. So
Yes, so wonderfully explained.
Every time it's training.
Yes, sometimes it's time to train the staff. Yes, you're definitely right. And thank you. You are so, you think into the things so deeply and take out the solutions. It's really marvelous. You know, I was just mind blown, and I was listening to you like this, that's really mind blowing. That's really wonderful.
But there's another thing as well, is that we in the last couple of years at that school, we suddenly had some children coming in with severe autism. And whereas teach stations are very good because it's structured, and there's certain things like that for some children with autism, they need this kind of structure. And then they can, everything's fine, I can manage. But for some children, we were finding that the structure was terrible. They were climbing the walls. They just didn't like it at all. And so what we introduced was DIR floor time. And DIR floor time is a play-based therapy. And it's a play-based way of learning. What we found was with the children with severely challenging behaviour, that DIR floor time worked for them. And it was where the teachers still had to do the same IEPs and decide on the challenges that the children needed. So they were still being educated, but they were being educated through play. So the children didn't realise. They didn't realise that they were being educated because what they were doing were playing at things that they liked playing at, but we had already worked out what we needed them to achieve through play. So, yeah.
Okay, so that's, I was so amazed and into it, wondering the things you are telling me. It's I'm not into state to. It's really wonderful. You are so innovative, adding more and more ideas to it. It's really wonderful. Let's move on to your.
Hello? Hello? It's all right, babes. Hello?
Can you? Sorry, just there was just my light went off.
Sound isn't very good, not hearing you. No.
I to hear me now? No?
Yes, yes.
No? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you could just, I just saw the time and it's like 40 minutes. And if you could, I would have to see that if you could tell us about your books. There are like huge number of books. You are talking about the future of special education and trampoline therapeutic and all that. If you could just explain me about those books, a little about them,
Yeah.
that what are these about? The future of special
The future of
schools.
special schools. I think we wrote that
That's
in
really,
2014. That's
what's it about?
It's about different therapies that were introduced, therapeutic art, and the different therapies. Some of the ones we've just spoken about. It tells you the history of special schools in Great Britain as well at the beginning, and then it tells you how you can support. It's got session sheets you can photocopy off and use and so on. But that was written in 2014, I think it was. And so we've added more since then, certainly as a school we have, but there is a lot of useful material in there if you're starting out and you don't know where to start from. It's a very good book to start from. All profits, proceeds from this book go to the school. So no single person profits except the school from that book. That's available on Amazon. And then this book is virtual reality, augmented reality, and artificial intelligence in special education. So that will give you loads of ideas about technological interventions and how they can help in a special school. So that came out, I think, in 2018 or 2019. Loads, again, like I say, free resources in this school that you can use that I devised. That took a long time to make sure that I did the screening forms for virtual reality, all the kinds of things you need, all the permission slips that you need to give to parents and professionals and so on. So again, that's a very useful book in this day and age. And then
this is for parents as well as professionals.
Sorry?
Right? This is for parents and professionals.
Yes, for parents, professionals, yes. And then,
this book is about parents and professionals. The book you were talking about.
It's for parents and professionals.
It's about including technology?
Yes, including technology. Yeah.
Does it talk about the technology?
It does talk about all the technologies, and talks about all the latest technologies, and how you can support students in school and at home. And it tells you about virtual reality, augmented reality, and artificial intelligence, and what they are and how they can help. And then this one is therapeutic trampolining for children and young people with special educational needs, and that shows you how you can support children. Specific children with ADHD in trampolining, because they will use it slightly differently to a child with dyslexia. So a child with dyslexia and dyspraxia, that tells you how you can support them in trampolining and how it can help them. Children with autism, again, they learn slightly differently using a trampoline. Children with profound and multiple limb difficulties, they will use a trampoline differently as well. And so it tells you how you can support all these different children with them. Loads and loads of free resources in there. How to set up an after-school trampoline club. How to set up all sorts of things to do with trampolining. And it's therapeutic trampolining that I concentrate on. And it gives you loads of links to support that you can get as well. So that's that one. And then I just finished writing a book on music, sound and vibration in special education, and that won't be published for a few months. And I'm currently writing another book, which I won't go into at the moment because I'm in the middle of writing it. I think we'll probably finish, Pip. It's gone dead.
Hello, everyone. Sorry for this glitch on the internet. It was like a sudden glitch. I'm really sorry. And now we have to end up the session. It was really nice talking to Angie Anderson. She was telling us about inclusive education. How can we add this up in our schools, in our society. How can we make education provided to all, which is the basic right for everyone. Thank you everyone for watching it down and listening us. Thank you once again. Allah Hafiz. Bye.